So just to be very efficient with our time, they have asked me to facilitate our conversation. I will keep my introduction very brief so that we can have exchange among this wonderful group that is together. Our task is to discuss and provide input on what we call the flagship, one of the flagship product that is envisaged, that is a global investment framework. And this is one of the aspects of the work of the advocacy of PMNCH, which has over the years has been very prominent. And I can see among the colleagues that are here some familiar faces that have contributed to previous exercises we have done, especially when we did in 2014 the Global Investment Framework for Women and Children Health. So please, we will hear from Mark Hanson, who is the chair of the Knowledge and Evidence Group, some introduction to why we do this, and we really welcome that we put our thinking cap in trying to think what is new about this exercise that we are proposing to undertake, what are the multi-sectoral aspects that are always very complex, and also that we put our thinking cap in terms of how can this product really be used over time. Now, Mark, please, over to you. I know we have 5 slides to really speak to the product. Go ahead.
Thank you very much indeed, Flavia and colleagues. To greatly welcome the opportunity to tell you about this flagship deliverable, the Global Investment Framework on Women's, Children's and Adolescent Health and Well-being. As Flavia and I think some of you know, I'm a great believer in very simple conceptual slides. So without wishing to insult your intelligence, if I could have the next slide, please. This shows the passage of a package, if you like, of health, well-being and resilience across the life course. And I just want to make 3 points about it, really. One is that the passage depends very much on women's, children's and adolescent health and well-being. And so we start life on the left-hand side of that graph, if you like, at different places. And this is a lot more than just genetics, as you know. This package increases at different rates to reach different plateaus and then declines at different rates. Underlying all of this is maternal, newborn, child and adolescent health and well-being, which means really the second thing, that a low investment in this area has short, medium and long-term impact on what's sometimes called social value. And the little heading at the top is really just to make the point that this is more than just financial and health benefits. It includes environmental, cultural, social care, justice and security. These things are all intimately wrapped up together. And that's something which isn't always sufficiently appreciated, and I think it's something that our advocacy initiative can really take forward. The third point really is that it's important, sorry if I just go back, that it's important not just to think about the benefits of these investments across the life course, but also to think about the other side of the coin, the costs of inaction, which of course affects the life course of current generations, but actually operates across future generations too. And at a practical level, it very often makes or enforces the point that actually an intervention at one particular time in the life course will be much more effective and potentially much cheaper if it follows interventions earlier in the life course. Next slide, please. So the aim is to provide evidence for advocacy to invest at regional and country level in women, children's and adolescent health and well-being for socio-economic benefit across the life course and across generations. Health and economic progress are inseparable. Women, children and adolescent health and well-being have been, as you know, disproportionately affected by COVID. But as always in a crisis, there are opportunities, and recovery offers opportunities not only to build back better, but actually a phrase that the Secretariat have emphasised, which is build forward fairer, which I really like. But the evidence is lacking on the short, medium and longer term socioeconomic returns to investment in this area across the continuum and holistically. It's now more than a decade since, as Flavia mentioned, the partners put together the investment case, and of course the world has changed enormously in that time. Now, it isn't to say that there aren't some ongoing initiatives that we can build into our strategy. The WHO investment case in UHC, for example, has things on resilience and on longevity, but it doesn't have a specific component on investing in women, children and adolescent health. Similarly, the SDG 3 price tag doesn't have analysis on returns to investment. There are other ongoing initiatives from Guttmacher, for example, on SRHR, and we know, of course, of the fantastic work done by the GFF, and it's great that colleagues from that organisation have been able to join us today. PMH is positioned in a fantastic place as the world's largest women, children and adolescent health and wellbeing alliance, and of course its call to action, and as Helga was telling us yesterday, more than 32 billion in commitments to that initiative. So it really makes it the most effective leader in developing the global investment framework for mobilising equity enhancing finances, including of course domestic resources. This isn't all looking for external funding by any means. And then lastly, PMH's role as a convener for multi-stakeholder consensus groups will give many opportunities, including one that we've talked about very much over the last 24 hours, engaging adolescents and youth. Next slide, please. So if we look at the value of the global investment case, it will equip partners with robust evidence for advocacy, action and accountability. It will address inequities in women, children and adolescent health and well-being, so giving it a social justice angle. It will take a multi-sectoral approach to integrate the continuum, as I said earlier, of essential services, which are key to sustainable, resilient and fairer societies. It will demonstrate the socioeconomic gains for investing in this area. It will demonstrate the cost-benefit analysis of specific interventions and packages. And as I said at the beginning, it will also stress the costs of inaction in short, medium and longer term perspectives. And it will add value of global health security in resilience, preparedness, response and recovery. Because maternal, newborn, child and adolescent health and well-being has life course consequences, investing in it actually can reduce the impact of future crises. It may reduce their scale and it may also reduce their duration. And again, I think that that's a value-added point about security and resilience that is not always sufficiently appreciated. Next slide, please. So what's the proposed process of working? So we need to be informed by country and global level advocacy demands based on a needs assessment survey, and that's already being undertaken by the PEC and the SAC. And then with the Universities of Calgary, Southampton and Heidelberg, the Knowledge and Evidence Working Group are mapping existing investment cases at the global, the regional and the national levels, and we'll hope to have information on that, at least in draft form, very early in the new year, which will enable us to gain learning, highlight gaps and build on existing partner activities. Then the plan is that this would be developed under the auspices of the Knowledge and Evidence Working Group, reporting of course to SAC. It will have meaningful participation of benefiting populations, including adolescents and youth, to ensure that it's people-centred and linked to other priorities. We're not going to develop this in isolation. And then lastly, through extensive multi-stakeholder and multi-sectoral consultations with constituencies and other key partners, we want to ensure stakeholder engagement and ownership of this plan from the very start. The next slide, please. So just briefly, the outputs are the Global Investment Framework Report and a scoping review of women, children, adolescent health and wellbeing investment cases at global, regional or country level. A digital compendium and toolkits of investment case resources that can be used by countries and other and can be shared between countries. Country and regional level case studies to assist in adoption and implementation of investment cases, and then policy briefs, knowledge summaries, and digital long forms to disseminate the findings. Next slide, please. So if we look then at the timelines, the partnerships and the budget, we plan an 18-month project. Even that, I think, will be tight, but we'll aim to get going with a vengeance in January and work through till September 2023, which then might link to a range of other activities occurring around that time, possibly the UNGA, the Global Leaders Forum, the Adolescent Congress, possibly the G20. We hope, though, that will allow time for enough consultations and meaningful participation of all stakeholders. We have initial interest, I'm glad to say, from GFF, from the World Bank, from WHO and a range of universities. And of course, we'll then need to think about the financing and the budget for this. We think this could be an ideal project for partnership and co-funding, and so we welcome those opportunities. The last slide shows the questions that we were asked to consider as a group, and I won't go through them, Flavia, but perhaps we can leave them there, and I'll pass back to you to take the discussion forward. I hope that was helpful as an introduction.
Thank you so much, Mark, and it was very clear introduction, and also thank you so much for the knowledge and evidence group that's already done a lot of reading. So colleagues, we have basically less than half an hour. I propose that you raise your hands to make intervention. We also make use of the chat function. I see that the board is quite used. Even yesterday we had a lot of exchange, because the primary purpose of our exchange is really to gain much of your thoughts and much of your inputs and much of your questions, and also to gain interest whether you would like to be associated in a steering group or in a group that will work with Mark and the Secretariat in taking this forward. Okay, so I see that in the meantime we have dear friend Marlene that wants to come in. Please go ahead, Marlene. I see there are some others. I give the floor.
Flavia, I just want to come in to say that I'm here to apologize that I'm joining late, because we have quite some months. The maternal mortality due to COVID is really taking a big, we had 5 months who died in 20 days, so we had to deal with family issues and so on. So excuse me for being late. But I want to contribute, of course, from the ART constituency and to join my colleagues there to contribute to this session. Thanks.
Welcome. So Tiago, please.
Yes, thank you, Flavia, and thank you for the presentation. I've been in touch with the PMNCH Secretariat discussing, the project, and then we had some interesting conversation about comparing investment cases that Global Fund has done, Gavi. There are some joint investment cases, so this is all good. But I wanted to take a step back and then raise a question. That's a very personal question. When I see global investment framework, it sounds very distant from everything that we know about country ownership and focus, at country level impact. So I think even the name perhaps is something that we might reconsider, because I see a lot of merit in the effort, but just the name Global Investment Framework, I think it can put some people off. That's just one comment. And then a second comment, it's just to share an experience from Gavi, and I shared just previously on the chat. So Gavi worked with the Scaling Up Nutrition movement, and we were trying just to see, how when we integrate immunization and nutrition, what's the impact? And then there are already research studies studies showing that it actually increases the coverage. Then when we were doing this, we were looking at return on investment. And then, you will have one return of investment for immunization, one for nutrition. So when I saw your slide there, Mark, I think it's brilliant, to have some study when you have a holistic approach. And I think that's very much what PMNCH is. It's like bringing these different services in the continuum. And so that would be, I think, I'm suggesting that as a product. That would be an excellent product. And then that will help us so much in our advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tiago, also for the lived experience and definitely the name. I also have thought this is a key point to raise for the Secretariat helping us. How we present this, the name we use can be crucial and can put off. For us to understand what the effort we're doing for now is fine, but when we start discussing it, it might be putting off. Annika, I see you next. And then I see also Agnes, Darren, and Jean. Go ahead, Annika.
Thank you. And thank you for having me in this group. I think it's really interesting and important. And I just wanted to say that we, of course, at UNFPA in 2017, we did the return on investment or investment case on adolescents. And I think there are discussions now around doing that again and looking at the development. So my comments here are a couple. I think that it would be added value for PMNCH to be able to really compile and how can I say, analyze at a meta level of what's being done already and what the different studies are. Going back to Tiago's, when I looked at, I think it would be excellent to have a broader holistic investment case on women, adolescent, child and adolescent health. However, we know that the health and well-being of all those groups consist of such complex and, multifaceted factors that, each and every one would require almost an investment case. So to me, it seems a bit of a difficult endeavor. But I think in itself, if the framework could be there to really look at from a meta level what is already there and try to consolidate that in itself would be one step to really make, and I think it would align very much with what is PMNCH mandate and really focus on advocacy, because this is what would benefit everyone to see what is out there and how can we make use of that. But maybe that is the aim. But what I heard was that there is an aim to do a larger investment case on the broader and holistic area. And I think that might prove difficult, but let's see. I think UNFPA would be interested in it, yes, tentatively to say I need to go back and talk to my colleagues, but I think with the experience we have on different investment cases, I think we would very much appreciate to be part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Annika, and definitely UNFPA experience. One of the new part in the investment framework will really be looking at adolescent health and well-being. And this is, again, as you say, it's a complex area where we might need some innovative thinking. Agnes, coming in.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Flavia, and thanks for the presentation. I find the presentation really interesting and refreshing. First, I really love the use of financing framework, and I think it's time. And of course, the crisis of 2020 and the lessons learned from that crisis brings us to really questioning what we were doing before the crisis and the usefulness of what we're doing, and calls for a different outlook and a different look at these issues. And to be a bit more specific on that, I mean, I think the first thing is the notion of investment case, which we started to use actually in this community back in 2008, right, with the investment case on maternal and child health in Africa. since then has been, I would say, overused, misused, and abused. And I think it's probably time to put investment cases, the investment case language in a closet somewhere, and move to something that is more adapted to the SDG framework. One of the issues with investment case, I mean, is first it's been an overemphasis on planning and under-emphasis on impact evaluation, and actually checking whether what the investment case was promising actually happened before preparing another investment case, right? But when I said it's been misused and abused, we have now a situation in which, in many cases, the modeling of the investment case is used to actually as a substitution to the impact. And that's a huge problem, because then it's a misuse of the instrument. An investment case is not there to prove that something happened. It's there to actually carve some pathway to what could happen. And that's why I think it's the emphasis needs to go to be slightly rebalanced. When we had, in this past let's say 10 years, 12 years of mushrooming of investment case all over, we've developed all these modeling capacity, and it has exploded also with the computerization and the fact that we can do this. There are different tools that have been developed for these models, whether we talk about all the tools that we used to focus on 10 years ago, right, is to calculate, to develop those models. Now those models are uber developed, and yes, there's still a line of work that is extremely useful to develop them further. But what is interesting is that in that time, the kind of in-depth work that people like Cesar Victora has been doing, and that had informed our first exercises in modeling, have been underinvested. And now I think we have very little that is actually done in actually collecting real information about the impact of what we've been doing, and whether our hypotheses are correct. So I think that's the first area for which I think we need to move away from the language, because now it has a life of its own, and it's understood as an advocacy tool, and it's no longer a budgeting financing tool. So if we talk about financing, I think, and we are pretty now, there's quite a lot of consensus in the financing community that we should move away from that tool as a financing instrument. It's an advocacy instrument. This needs to be dealt with in its own space. The second reason,
Agnes,
yes,
I may ask that you.
Yeah, I'll go fast. The second reason,
history of these. That's why we wanted to have you. But you have like.
No, I'm going to be very fast. Just wanted to make a second point.
Yeah,
why I like framework is because we actually see a lot of the hypotheses that we had have been changed. First, we could see that before 2020, we could see that the hypothesis we had of progress and acceleration of progress was not necessarily going to be happening, because we had a slowing of this progress for different reasons. And in 2020, we see actually indicators going backwards, including in high-income countries. So we need to really have a different way of looking at this. And last but not least reason is the fact that within that time, we also documented the overwhelming evidence of fungibility and crowding out of public spending by health aid. So that means that in terms of financing, we need to address this problem. We cannot continue to work under the hypothesis that the health aid is additive. It's not. It's substitutive. So we need to work on that. And so that's it. And but as I want to be extremely positive, saying we're very happy to be part of this and actually also contributing financially as Team France, because it's for us. It's actually very timely because we are at the beginning of completely reassessing our global health strategy. So that's, and as you know, a priority is gender and sexual and reproductive health and maternal and child health. So we will very much be part of this. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Agnes. And all your points, are really lessons learned. We were in the question we had, what are the lessons learned from previous? I hope, we have captured, we are recording this, so we have captured all of these, and we will come back to you for more. Darren, please.
Thanks, Flavia. It's so nice to see you, Agnes, and those comments were really well taken. Particularly your point about health financing, aid financing at the end, it's unpredictable, as we also know from recent experience. So I'll just make, I think, 4 very quick points. First of all, I thought the presentation was excellent, Mark. Thank you for that. There's a lot there, though. Super ambitious. Can we do it all? And if we can't quite do it all, where would we focus? And I mean, all the products, for example, you highlight would be fantastic, but as I say, there's a lot there. I'm very happy to see if our economists can lean in and support this as well. So we're doing quite a bit of work in this sort of area. Another point is that I think this is very timely. There are a lot of efforts underway to link up the global health space, health and finance ministers and ministries at the moment, and you'll know that through the G20 there's quite a process to create a new health and finance board. It's starting off with a task force to look at what's out there already, and obviously it's in the COVID context, but nonetheless, that point, I think there's been insufficient interaction between health and finance ministries is right, and this is a way to get our issues into that emerging debate. And the third point is we should look at where the greatest returns come from. It might be uncomfortable, actually, but we should be ready for that as we do this, take this work forward. If we can't invest across the whole spectrum of WCAH, where do you get the best returns on that whole life cycle that you talk about? And I say that might be a bit uncomfortable. And then finally, your point about systems and how these investments can strengthen global health security, I think would be a really useful element to bring out of the work and the analysis. One of the points we're making in international dialogue at the moment is that the reason we're finding it so hard to roll out vaccines, and suddenly there's no shortage of vaccines. Well, shortages of vaccines is not the major problem at the moment. It's actually delivering them. And vaccines are being rejected, in fact. Yeah, and the reality is you can't switch on health systems overnight when you need them. They're long-term investments, and getting that long-term case and that global health security angle, I think, into this will be really important. And now is the right moment to be making that argument. Thanks.
Thanks, Darren. Jean? Unmute. No, I still cannot hear you, Jean. Can the other hear her? No. Try again. No. Okay. In the meantime, while we are working on this, I'd like to give the floor to Leslie. Leslie, please come in.
Thanks, Flavia. Just to quickly note and build on all the comments done previously, I think we're terribly supportive of this, and I would stress that Tiago's comments on the value add are really critical. One note, just a thought, this is a hugely, as per Annika's suggestion, complex set of issues. And I mean, really, we could pick apart each one and it would be an entire investment framework in and of itself. Therefore, I wonder about thinking about phasing. I mean, implicit, there is phasing, and also flexibility in terms of the deliverables and what we ultimately come up with. I just think as it goes forward and we build on what's already happening, that we may find the need to shift or at least maybe pare down final outcomes and with no loss of value, but just that it is a very tight timeline and there is a tremendous amount of information to get through. So that's just an additional comment to think about phasing and flexibility as we go forward. Thanks.
Thank you.
Flavia, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure what I had wrong. Well, first, I want to thank Mark, as always, for what I call learned comments, because the leadership is really valued. It was a very complex but thorough presentation. And always what I say, it's well aligned, well developed, and it's knowledge and evidence that forms the basis of the work, whether we're going to be talking advocacy or partner engagement. That's the basis of where we want to go. So I want to recognize that this is really about health system strengthening. It's a multifaceted framework, as others have said, putting forward maternal, newborn, and children's health. And I like the term holistic with a financial understanding. But I want to also be aware that it's an important argument and a justification for some, that they won't listen to all of the other arguments, but this is an important element of decision-making processes to have a financial justification. So putting it holistically with all the elements is really important. And I think that it helps advise the advocacy and partner engagement groups with the strong investment. The only thing, and I don't want to be negative, but just a perspective. What do we learn from systems that have already looked at this? And I'll use lead as an example. We know that there's no safe level of lead. We know that we've had return on investments about lead. We know the cost in a city for replacing lead, and we still haven't been able to win the arguments around replacing lead. So how do we learn from that framework where we've got a bountiful information to bring about changes? How are we going to frame our discussion so that we learn from what hasn't happened with lead and make it, we've got clear scientific data, we've got clear assessment, we know the cost of change, and yet we still don't win the argument. So how are we going to be able to frame this to win the argument, I guess I would say.
That's a very important question, a good question. I want to give one last chance to Amira to speak, and then we'll hear from Mark and Mike that are preparing 1 or 2 slides to report to the rest of the group, because this is an amazing conversation. This is just the beginning. It's so rich. Amira, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Flavia. Hi, everyone. So I just wanted to mention 2 points. So the first one, I also represent the private sector constituency at PMNCH. And I wanted to share first an experience I received from a private sector organization who provides healthcare solutions for women. And when they talk to health ministers, it's very difficult for them to present their solutions for women, for example, to prevent excessive bleeding, for safe birth, where the solution costs only 90 cents dollars. But when they present healthcare solution for men and it costs $100 and more, they have no issue in having it budgeted. So with them and other constituents at the forum, we were interested in hosting 2 different works. The first one is a dialogue series with health ministers to turn the discussions and really demonstrate that investing in women's health is a return in investment and provides value. And the second one is really working on report. So I was wondering, and maybe we can have a separate discussion on how we can join forces here. And at the forum, we have the stakeholders, we have the network, we have the community, and whether we would be able to host a portion of the work that you guys are building, because we might have additional resources. So I'm just sharing this opportunity for you guys, but also showcasing that we have exactly the same narrative, the same language from the private sector as well. So let's combine efforts and join forces.
No, that is wonderful, Amira. And if I can just, I see a thread here that has emerged from the conversation that is, of course, number one, building on the existing experiences, and the number of partners of PMNCH as you have explained, are doing, UNFPA is doing a piece on adolescents, you're looking at women. So the first step really clearly that is coming is assessing and assembling all of these and trying to create a framework that analyzes what impact these efforts have had, because we want to make an attempt that is fresh and that has potential of successes where previously we have failed. A second thread that is emerging in my mind, Darren, you said very well, is the need for clearly engaging in the early conversation. You said it as well, Agnes, the financier, the economist. When we did the first attempt, Darren, you probably will remember, we engaged chief economist at the FID, what was then called. So we need to really, we welcome suggestion from all of you of who are these people that we need to engage early in the conversation, in the shaping of the framework and in the shaping of the arguments. And then the other part that has come very, very clear from this conversation we're having so far is we need to be fresh. We need to be, I think you put it best, Agnes. I think, we need to have a language and a way of speaking that is adjusted to the current context we are living in, framing the pandemic that we are living and we will be living for probably another year or two, but also looking at the fresh and the new things, the new threats, for example, to adolescent well-being, some of the new aspects that might be helping us. Mark and Mike, do we have enough to report back? I wish this could continue. They keep sending me messages, we have to stop.
I'm sure we do, Flavia. We thank you all for those fantastic points. Yes, it's ambitious, but that's what we're all about. I don't like the name. You don't like the name. I think we really think hard about that. I think trying to think what success looks like is one of the questions we've posed is critical. Yeah. And as Jeannie said, learning from the past and from things that haven't worked despite a huge amount of effort like lead will really help us. I think it's going to be a fantastic partnership, and I think we need to look at our flexibility and phasing of what we're trying to deliver so we really do deliver it. But I think that, with your comments, we've got a really helpful way forward. Thank you.
Maybe, Etienne, we have not discussed that in detail yet, but you were thinking to create like a steering group or there is a knowledge and evidence working group that is, has produced this first thinking, but this group that we are here is amazing, the comments also on the chat from Marlene, also from Nalesha, how do we capitalize on these? I wouldn't want to, lose these and maybe talk with these people 6 months down the line, because it's a very rich potential and contribution and also potential co-financing that has emerged.
Yeah, very briefly on this, thanks, Flavia. Tremendous input, emerging consensus, and really useful insights. We will establish a steering committee for this work in the first quarter of next year, when we have direction of travel from the SAC retreat early February, and then co-opted by the executive committee. And so in the first 3 months of next year, we will establish this governance body, and we'll make sure to reach out to stakeholders that are in this breakout session, because you've provided such fantastic input and really kind of anchoring this in a contemporary thinking around what's needed for our populations. Thank you. Back to you, Flavia.
Thank you so much. Do we have that one slide or two slides that we are presenting, or we trust that we will produce it in the 5 minutes break?
Well, it's in the head.
Oh,
it's
good.
In the head, it's in the air, Mike. Oh, wonderful.
It's in the head, but let's see how we can fine tune. Yes, we'll try it, and we'll try to.
Agnes, you still have your hands up. Is it from before? You wanted to a final comment?
Sorry, it was an old hand.
Okay.
But I can say just a few words that yes, I think it's exactly right. Is we need to address this issue from a different perspective than we used to in the past. And one of the, I think there are different aspects to it. One, we need to bring about the new evidence of the past years, including the evidence from last year. I was actually particularly struck now that in the French conversation to realize that we actually have an increase in child mortality, in infant mortality over the past few years. And you see that we have this